Hello and welcome to Better Workdays, a show dedicated to helping everyday professionals create better days at work. I'm your host, Andy Morrison from Real Custom Training, where we design and deliver professional development workshops that are relevant, engaging, actionable, and lasting. Each week on Better Workdays, we'll be taking a look at a specific concept, skill, or story that we use in our workshops. We'll make sure that they're easy to understand, fun to learn about, and most importantly, that they can be applied immediately in the workplace as soon as you finish the episode. Thank you for joining us. It's time for Better Workdays from Real Custom Training. Hey everybody, welcome back to Better Workdays. I'm your host, Andy Morrison, and this week's episode is about ways you can earn influence at work even when you don't have any authority. That's this week on Better Workdays. 4 ways to earn influence when you don't have authority. Now, what led me to put this topic on the docket for this week? Well, I am in the midst of running our Supervisory Essentials program. This is level 2 in our Level Up Leadership program, and there's 6 weekly workshops in Supervisory Essentials. And as you can see on the screen, the second workshop that folks take is called Earning Influence. You have to earn it. All right, go back to our episode on power in the workplace for a refresher on this concept. But basically, we don't teach people how to exert influence, all right? It's something you have to earn, okay? There's some power and influence that can be given to you by your organization, but for the most part, you're going to have to earn it. And that is especially true when you are someone who is not technically a supervisor, but you are expected to execute some of the functions of a supervisor. Let me expand on that for you. Here's the definition that we use in our program with people, all right, of what we mean when we say supervise. Supervision is the act of overseeing, monitoring, and/or influencing the activities and behaviors of others. Now, what happens in our workshops is sometimes we have people who they're not a supervisor on paper. You know, they don't technically have anybody that reports to them. They're not doing performance reviews. They don't have any of the positional authority to grant punishments or rewards and things like that. Yet they are expected to influence the activities and behaviors of others. One common scenario I run into with our participants is in the manufacturing industry. There will be folks who are on the engineering side who are expected to have some influence over the activities and behaviors of people on the production side of the operation. All right, so the people in my workshop, the engineers, they're not technically the supervisors. They're not the bosses of the folks working on the production side, but they are expected to have some influence over them. And that can be a really tough spot to be in. Again, go back, watch our Power in the Workplace episode to learn more about the difficulty in that, okay? When you're expected to influence activities and behaviors of others, but you don't actually have any positional authority to do so. When you're in that type of situation, what resources do you have left? It's on you to earn influence with those people. You can't play the boss card. You've got to earn influence with them and then exert that influence. So this episode is primarily for anybody who finds themselves in those circumstances where you've got to influence activities and behaviors of others, but you are not their boss. However, if you are someone's boss, keep watching because these are applicable principles anyway. You'll be able to use these as well. But this is especially for those of you who are like people in my workshops who have to influence other people without playing the boss card. This episode's going to help you out. And let's remember too, another supervision definition that I like to use in the workshop is this one from Robert Cialdini. He said the fundamental challenge of leadership is getting things done through other people. And that is very much the case when you're trying to influence people who are not employees that report to you. You're trying to get things done through them. I'm going to give you 4 easy ways in this episode that you can start earning the influence you need to get things done through other people who don't report to you. And I'm going to share this slide. If you're a diehard Better Workdays fan, and I know there's some of you out there, you've seen this slide a bunch because I use it a lot and it's worth reiterating. This is the scale of influencing human behavior. Now, if you watch and listen to this and you say, well, you know, I'm not looking to influence human behavior. I'm a supervisor at my company. I'm looking to make sure people get their work done. I don't need to influence human behavior. I'm not a psychologist. Well, guess what? When you sign up to be somebody's boss, you are indeed signing up to try to influence human behavior. Like it or not, That's the reality of it. And if you succeed as a supervisor or manager, it's because you successfully influenced people. If you fail, it's because you didn't try to influence human behavior. You've got to accept the reality that this is what you're being asked to do. And this is incredibly difficult to do as you move down this scale. When it comes to attitudes, habits, and personality traits, very, very difficult to influence in other people. Job skills, time and work management, deeper knowledge, those things can be easier to influence. But again, if you're a supervisor or manager, you have indeed accepted the responsibility of influencing human behavior. The sooner you accept that and start working on the skills that'll enable you to do so, the better off you're going to be. And these skills that we're going to talk about today will help you with that. Now, where are we getting these 4 ways that you can earn influence without authority? I already mentioned him. Robert Cialdini, Dr. Robert Cialdini, and his 8 principles of persuasion. This is something that I cover for folks in our Supervisory Essentials program, because these are principles of persuasion that can help supervisors and non-supervisors alike when it comes to influencing other people's behavior. I'm pulling all this from this wonderful book, Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini, PhD. And let me give you a little backstory on the book. I got my master's from Eastern Connecticut State University in organizational management, and Go Warriors, I think is the Eastern mascot. I had a great experience there. Among those great experiences was the very first book that I had to read in grad school. Now, I was already working in the training and development field, and so I was very much, and remain obviously, a big believer in education that's applicable in the workplace. So the first class I took with Dr. Elizabeth Scott at Eastern's organizational management program, this was the book that she had us read for the class. And it being my first class in grad school and me being such a proponent of applicable education, this was a great book to read because it told me, oh, okay, in this grad program, they get it. They're going to have us read stuff that's actually going to help us out at work. And I had so many takeaways from this book. These are principles that I think everybody should be aware of. And that's because, as Cialdini talks about in the book, these principles of persuasion, we're going to talk about how to use them for your own benefit. Use them to serve your own self-interest. Nothing wrong with that, as long as you're not being manipulative. And you're not the only one, though, who can use these. And Cialdini talks in the book a lot about the ways in which marketers, people whose job it is to persuade other people, he talks a lot about the ways that they use these principles of persuasion to help sway us to make decisions that they want us to make, decisions that don't necessarily always serve our best interest. But by making you aware of the principles and by making you aware of the ways in which they are often used against us, he basically gives you the ability to arm yourself against these, to recognize when they're being used against you and to act accordingly so that you don't get persuaded to make a decision that is against your best interest. We're going to focus on how to use these yourself. But again, I highly recommend that book. And maybe I'll do a future episode on how to guard yourself against these. But if you want to learn how to guard yourself against these, go get the book, check it out. But for today, I'm going to just take 4 of these and I'm going to show you how you can start using them at work. And it's easy. It's easy. Or I shouldn't say easy. It's simple. Like a lot of the leadership stuff that we cover, and go get the same leadership stuff from anybody else in the industry. This is a truth about these principles and concepts, not just when I'm presenting them, when anybody is. They are often simple in concept. They're simple to wrap your head around. They're simple to explain on paper. They are difficult in implementing consistently. And that's all you have to worry about, though, is the consistent part of it. Just start implementing it consistently and have the patience to do so over a significant period of time, and you'll start to reap the rewards. So we're going to look at 4 of these principles of persuasion. I'll explain them a little bit to you, and I'll talk a little bit about ways in which people can go right back to work and start using these 4 principles of persuasion to earn influence, whether you have authority or not. Now, the first one, predictability. Okay, this is one of Cialdini's principles of persuasion. Predictability basically means people tend to respond to what they expect. So here's an example that came up with in one of our workshops once. somebody was talking about how they often have to call a peer, coworker in another department, and talk to them about mistakes that were made in a certain process. And every time my workshop participant calls this employee, they before, in an effort to be, direct and simple, would kind of just get them on the phone and immediately get right into, hey, here's the mistake that you made. Okay. Now, what they told me was that eventually this employee, when they answer the phone, they would answer the phone and say, what did I do this time? Okay. And they'd be defensive. Well, that's the predictability principle in action. If you're calling someone and immediately kind of laying into them a little bit about mistakes that they made, eventually predictability tells us they are going to answer the phone and say, what did I do this time? The problem when they answer the phone that way is that they're immediately in a defensive mindset. And it was awesome. This same participant told us, using some of the skills that they acquired in our workshop, they took a different tact the next time they had to call this employee, had a great conversation, got deeper insight into why certain errors were being made, collaboratively came up with ways to mitigate those errors in the future, and honestly walked away with a stronger relationship. And what I said to that participant is, you'll know that this is working when that person stops answering the phone with, what did I do this time? That's how you'll know. You've set up a new expectation from them. So basically, be consistent in your actions. And remember, people respond to you based on their expectations of your behavior. All right. So if you've got employees that you think, say you got an employee that you think is a knucklehead, and you treat them like they're a knucklehead, they're going to start behaving accordingly. Why would they go above and beyond when they know that their boss thinks they're a knucklehead? They're gonna rise to your expectation, okay? So set expectations for people. Try to treat them as if they are, or that they are capable of becoming, the employees that you want them to be. Reciprocity. I love this one. All right. How deep do we want to get here? The reciprocity principle, if you want to know the root of this, think back to in human evolutionary history. At some point for human beings, we needed to start bartering with one another within our tribes, of essentially, you're better at hunting than I am. I'm pretty good at taking care of the sick people back home. So you go out and hunt, share what you bring back with me, and in exchange, I will stay back. I won't help out on the hunt, but I'll take care of the sick people. Okay. Now, what happens if the hunter goes out, the person who stays back takes care of the sick people, and when the hunter comes back, they don't share the meat? The hunter doesn't live up to their end of the deal. That person taking care of the sick people is going to say, well, I'm not going to take care of the sick people anymore. I did something for you. You're supposed to do something for me. That's how this works. That's the reciprocity principle. That expectation, I did something for you. You need to do something for me. Or the reverse of that, you did something for me, now I owe you something back. That is so deeply ingrained in us because we needed that reciprocity principle to survive as a species. Excuse me, folks, my phone is ringing. Hello, Emily. Hi. Oh, yes, I will be there soon. I'm recording a podcast. You are live to tape on Better Workdays right now, but I will be home soon to get her. Okay, love you. Bye. That was my beautiful wife, Emily. She just started a new job at Pomfret School. But anyway, the reciprocity principle, it's deeply ingrained in us, and it is that I did something for you, you have to do something for me. How can you use this to persuade people, to build up your influence? Well, I would do this a lot, and I still do it too. Recently I had a client that they were late on something, whatever, no big deal, but they apologized for it. When I'm in a situation where somebody makes a mistake like that, where they're late with something, they miss a deadline for me, I always try to say something along the lines of, hey, it's okay, because I know you're going to be cool to me when I miss a deadline for you, or when I don't get something done. So basically, it's like saying, hey, I'm going to be chill about it when you made that mistake, because I expect you to reciprocate that the next time I make a mistake. All right. So same thing with last minute requests. When if I would have a coworker who would bring a last minute request to me or need help urgently with something, I would always try to be very cool about it and help them if I could, because I knew there's definitely going to be times when I'm going to turn to them and I'm going to need help under similar circumstances. And if I have helped them before, the reciprocity principle tells me they're going to feel more obligated and therefore be more likely to help me out when I need that help. So we can use that to our advantage. How do you apply this? Offer value first. You don't have to be asked to offer someone value. You offer someone value, you have planted that seed, all right? You've inceptioned them, if you're familiar with that movie in a way. You've planted the seed that now they owe you something of value in the future. You may be feeling, oh, this sounds manipulative. Here's the difference, okay, between influencing somebody and manipulating somebody. It's manipulative when you don't care about that person, when you only are doing what you're doing with them to try to get something from them that serves you. When you don't care about them at all, then it is manipulative. But if you're doing this stuff with care and concern for the other person as a human being, then it's not manipulative. It's just building up influence. So keep that in mind. Anytime you do a favor for somebody in the workplace, anytime you help somebody out, you're building up reciprocity. They are going to want to reciprocate that. Our programs, leadership development programs, employee training programs, are a huge way that companies can use the reciprocity principle to their benefit. Because if you have an employee and you've invested thousands of dollars into their management skills, into their leadership skills, and if because of that investment, they've moved up the ladder, they're making more money, their family's better off, they're going to Disney every other year instead of every 5 years, I mean, it's no guarantee, but the chances of that employee feeling like they owe it to your company who has done so much for them and invested in them and helped them build this great future and this great life that they're now living, if they feel that way towards you, the reciprocity principle tells us if somebody says, hey, there's a job opening down the street, that employee is going to say, no, my company's done so much for me. I'm not going anywhere. It's going to take a lot. You do a lot for your employee. It's going to take a lot for them to go against the reciprocity principle and leave your organization. So if you want to work on retainment, okay, and retention, keep the reciprocity principle in mind. What have you done for your employees over and above paying them to do their basic duties for you? If you've invested in them, they're going to want to reciprocate by sticking with you. Keep that in mind. Huge deal. Leadership development is a great way to use the reciprocity principle. All right, the third one I want you to keep in mind is liking, the liking principle. I think you can figure that out, right? It's easy. People are more likely to be influenced by somebody that we like. Have you ever noticed someone that wants to sell you something often starts with jokes? They often start with trying to find out things about you personally. Oh, you like to fish? Me too. Where do you go? Blah, 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 blah. Then by the time they get to their sales pitch, you're thinking, oh, I like this person. Yeah, I would like to buy a new roof with you. I would like to buy new windows with your company, whatever it's going to be. You can see this. People will return to stores that have friendly service, even if prices are higher somewhere else. All right. Or if you go into a store where the prices are lower, but the employees are complete jerks, you may say, you know what? It's a couple bucks more expensive down the street, but I'm going to go there where they know my name and they're super nice to me. All right. It's, again, simple. People are more willing to do stuff for people that they like. Therefore, if you want to earn influence at work, be likable. All right. Build relationships by being personable and being likable. At the very least, be polite. I cannot tell you how many people in our workshops will say that there is a lack of just civility and politeness in some of their interactions with people at work. And I always think to myself, man, that manager who's not being polite is just, they're shooting themselves in the foot. Just be nice. Don't be a jerk. It goes so far. You will build up more influence with people if they like you. And that doesn't mean be phony. It doesn't mean be phony. All right? If you're worried about being phony, then just at least make this commitment to me. You're going to be polite in all of your interactions with people at work, even the ones that you don't think deserve it. Probably more so the ones you don't think deserve it. Be polite, be nice, be likable. It's going to earn you more influence, and you're going to have better work days anyway, because Jesus, who wants to go to work and fight and snipe and not get along with people? Be likable, everybody. You'll have better work days, and it'll help the bottom line as well. All right? Build those relationships, be personable and likable. And if that sounds like too tall of a task, at least to commit to me that you'll use your pleases and your thank yous at work. Lastly, self-interest. People act in ways that benefit them. What a crazy concept. Of course we do. Again, if you look at it from an evolutionary perspective, animals don't necessarily do things that hurt their long-term survival prospects. So in a way, it's ingrained in almost every living thing to do stuff in our own self-interest. In the workplace, it's a little, it's not always necessarily life or death. But in the workplace, this means just think of it in terms of goal alignment, okay? When I worked at the community college system and they were consolidating the 12 community colleges, sometimes I would look at the leadership team and I would think to myself, I think intellectually that person knows this plan is seriously flawed and there's going to be these really negative repercussions from it. And I would think, why don't they do the right thing and say that out loud? Well, now in retrospect, I realize that was naive of me. They were acting in their own self-interest. If your organization has a project and they bring you on to lead that project or that initiative, it would be against your self-interest to torpedo that project or initiative. Even if you have your own misgivings, you're still going to strategically try to lead it through to be successful because that's your self-interest. That was the leaders I was being critical of. I was expecting them to act in a way that went against their self-interest, and that's not a realistic expectation. They were brought in to get a ball over the goal line, all right, for the consolidation, and that's what they were going to try to do. It didn't matter to them whether I thought it was the right thing to do or not to get that ball over the goal line, because they were brought in to get that job done, and it's in their self-interest to get that done. So keep in mind, employees are extremely unlikely to act in ways that hurt their own goal attainment. This is true of the people that report to you. This is true of your peers. This is true of your boss. This is true of their boss. Why on earth would anyone do anything that hurts their goal attainment? Whether you think they should or not. Why would they do that? They won't. And it'd be unreasonable to expect you to do that too. So how do you apply this? Keep it in mind when you're trying to influence anybody at work. Make sure you know what their goals are, what their objectives are, what matters to them the most, and then frame your requests in terms of how it benefits the other person. How doing what you want them to do is actually in their self-interest and the best thing for them and their goal attainment. If you can do that, you will be far more influential. All right, so 4 principles that you can apply if you want to be more influential at work, especially if you don't have any formal authority. And on the topic of self-interest, I want to say this. That's how you build trust. You actually build trust with people by keeping their self-interest in mind. A lot of, if not all, of the management, the techniques, the concepts, the strategies that we go over, not many of them will work if you don't have trust from your employees. All right. If your employees or the people working alongside you don't trust you, it's going to be very difficult to have influence beyond authority. Okay. Bosses that say do it or you're fired, they get compliance. They don't necessarily have trust, and you need trust to get commitment from people. Trust is the conviction that you genuinely want to help somebody. All right. If your employees genuinely believe that you want to help them, that means that they trust you. And that means you have to keep their self-interest in mind. If your employee believes that you are going to help them in a way that serves their self-interest, that means you've earned their trust. So you have to make sure your employees and everybody around you that you're trying to influence, that they believe you genuinely want to help them. And how do you do that? Well, you have to genuinely want to help them. So if that sounds like a struggle to you, you got to work on your own management mindset, and we can talk about that in future episodes. But you got to genuinely want to help them. Even that knucklehead that pisses you off so bad at work that you don't want to be polite to, that you want to scream at, that you don't think deserves to be, treated using some of our leadership principles and management, that person especially, you've got to want to help them. You have to want to help them, and you have to approach everything at work from that perspective of wanting to help. All right, pop wisdom to really drive this home. I've mentioned a few times, I love the show Succession. Spoiler warning, if you have not seen Succession, get out of here. Go. Get out now. Go. Get out of here. Go start watching Succession. Watch all 4 seasons. Then come back and watch this set, okay? Because I'm going to talk about stuff that happens in Succession. But for those of you out there listening who are big Succession fans, let's talk about one of the pivotal moments in the series, all right? Jerry Keller. Is it Jerry Keller? I know it's Jerry. I think it's Jerry Keller. Remember season 2, she starts mentoring Roman, okay? And then in season 3, when they really ramp up their mentorship and make it a bit more formal, her advice to Roman at one point is that he needs to think 24/7. He needs to be asking himself this question: how does this advance my personal position? That's Jerry acknowledging the self-interest principle of persuasion. She knows that everybody else at Waystar Royco, okay, all the big wigs, all right, the people that have accumulated power there, she knows that that's how they're thinking. How does this advance my personal position? All right, and she knows she needs to be thinking about that 24/7 for herself as well. And that's her advice to Roman. What happens later at the end of season 3? Logan Roy is on the precipice of selling Waystar Royco to Mattson. Okay, he's going to sell it to the Swede, and Roman and the other kids want to stop that from happening. They get to the room where Jerry's there with Logan and all the other big players, and what does Roman do? He gets on his knees in front of Jerry and he says, "Please stop this. Stop this sale from happening." And what does Jerry say to him? "How does it serve my interest, Roman?" If Jerry were to do what Roman wants him to do here, she'd be going against her own self-interest. And that moment, to me, I love that moment, because that was Jerry indirectly, the subtext there, that's Jerry saying to Roman, you clearly didn't get the lesson from me that I was trying to give you. You're asking me to do something in service of your self-interest that would hurt my self-interest. How does doing what you want me to do, how does torpedoing this deal, how does it serve my interests? If Roman had really processed Jerry's advice originally, he never would have made that request from her. He would have first tried to figure out, how can I convince Jerry or show Jerry that torpedoing the deal is in her best interest? But he didn't do that. He just made a naked appeal to Jerry to do it out of concern for his own self-interest. And Jerry's whole point to him is, no, Roman, why would I do that? None of us here are gonna do that. We're all going to do the thing that best serves our own interest. So get on board with it. And Roman didn't get on board with it, and it cost him at the end of season 3. So keep that in mind, okay? Succession's a great place to find a lot of these examples. Horrid people in Succession. I'm not saying to be like them in every regard. But Succession's full of examples of ways in which you can see these leadership principles in action in the course of the show, and this is one of them. How does it serve my interests? Everybody everywhere is asking themselves that all the time. You need to make sure when you're making a request of someone at work that you have an answer for that. How does that person doing what you want them to do best serve their interests? If you don't have an answer to that, don't make the request. All right, folks, that's it for this week on Better Workdays. As you heard in my phone call, I got to go pick up my daughter soon. We will be back in a couple weeks. We're going to take a couple weeks off of Better Workdays. 30 episodes in, I'm considering this season 1. My goals for season 1 were this. Put content out on a weekly basis, which we've pretty much done. I think there's been 3 weeks where we missed a week due to vacations and planned time off and things like that. For the most part, we've been pumping out an episode a week, which was my goal, to get used to that consistent pattern of putting episodes out. Client companies are using the episodes. We're using the episodes in our workshops. It's great to be able to say to somebody, hey, this thing that came up in our workshop today, if you want a deeper 20-minute dive into that topic, here's an episode of Better Workdays. That was my other goal, was to be able to use it to offer more value to our clients, be able to use it to find new clients for real custom training, and it's been terrific. But 30 episodes in, now it's time to look at the show and say, what can we do better? I know what we've done well. What could we do better? So here's some of the things we'll try to do in season 2 to improve Better Workdays. We're going to have more guests, all right? Season 1 has largely been, I mean, you could call it a webinar pretty much, right? It's a podcast, but it's got the webinar format to it. Season 2, we'll do that occasionally, but season 2, I'd like to be much more dependent on having guests come in. And our guests, at first, we're going to have a big emphasis on Northeastern Connecticut. I want to get local leaders on the show that I deal with through Real Custom Training, that I deal with through my different community endeavors. I want to get them on, and I want to get them talking so that you're hearing perspectives from them as well. We're going to have more interaction with the audience on social media, and season 2 is going to be terrific. So keep an eye out. Like I said, we're going to take a couple weeks off, but in September, I don't have a date yet. By the end of September, we will restart and we will launch season 2 of Better Workdays. Until then, thank you so much for checking it out. I was talking to our producer, Menners, Piccolo Podcast in Sydney, Australia. I was talking to him recently, and we've got some loyal listeners, which really means the world to me, and we're just going to acquire even more of them as we go forward. But I greatly appreciate everybody who has listened, and the people in the local business community who have told me, hey, I like your podcast, or hey, I sent this episode to an employee. It means the world. It's been a great, rewarding experience, and it's only going to get better from here as we work on making better workdays together. All right. Thank you for checking out Better Workdays. That's a wrap on season 1. Season 2 will be coming up in September. And until then, go back and watch all the episodes. Try this stuff out at work, and you'll have better workdays. I promise it. All right. Take care. Thank you.